Welcome to Lesson 1 of Android App Development Fundamentals. In this lesson, we're going to be focusing on how to set up your development environment. Now, one of the key things you're going to need to do is to get a bunch of software from the website that you see displayed here on the screen, developer.android.com. Now, this is the home page for the site, and the key tab on this site is the SDK tab. And before you get into setting up your environment, you do want to make sure that you check out the SDK System Requirements link down here in the left-hand column so that you can ensure that your computer has the minimum requirements or meets the minimum requirements for Android app development. Now, we're not going to start downloading the Android SDK and tools quite yet because there are a couple of other things that we're going to need to install first. Before I get into the installations, I just want to overview some of the other tabs that are available to you here on the Android developer site. You'll notice that we have a Dev Guide tab, and the Dev Guide provides all sorts of nice articles on how to work with various aspects of Android and the Android APIs. We have a reference tab, which is where you'll go for all of the documentation about the many different packages that are available to you in Android, the details for a given package, and in the case that you've already selected a package or a class within the package, the details of that package or class. We also have a resources tab where you'll find all sorts of nice resources, including sample code that's provided by Google to show you how to work with various aspects of Android, articles and tutorials as well. And we have a videos blog where you can watch videos about Android development, and then the Android team from Google also has a blog that you can access right through here as well. Now, before you get started with the Android tools development from the SDK tab, you want to make sure that you have Java installed on your computer. When you're developing in Android, you can use Windows, Linux, or Mac OS X as your development platform. And Java is available for all of those platforms. Now, if you go to the main Downloads tab for Java, which you can find on this Oracle website, you'll see that as of right now, the current version of Java is Java SE7, and for Android development you actually need only Java SE6, which is available a little bit further down here on the page. Here you can see the Java SE6 update 29, which at the time of this video recording is the most up-to-date version of Java Standard Edition 6. And for the purpose of development, you're going to need the JDK. So you'll want to download that, and please be sure to carefully follow your installation instructions, which are provided right down below here, to make sure that Java is really set up correctly on your computer. Now, when you go to the downloads page, you'll see for Java SE6 that there's versions for Linux, Solaris, and Windows. So again, with Android development, you can develop on Windows and Linux, not on Solaris. But you can also develop on Mac OS X. Now, if you've already installed the Xcode developer tools for Mac OS X, then Java should be installed on your computer. But you also have another option for JDK installation on Mac OS X, which is the Open JDK port of the JDK, and you can get that from the website that's displayed here on the screen. So again, Windows, Linux, and Mac OS X, make sure that you first have the JDK installed properly on your system. The next step is going to be to install Eclipse. And for that purpose, we'll go to eclipse.org/downloads. Now, it is possible to develop for Android without installing Eclipse, and there are many Android developers who do that. However, in the context of this Android App Development Fundamentals Live Lessons product, everything I show you is in the context of the Eclipse IDE using the Android development tools through that IDE. So to follow along properly, you will want to make sure that you have Eclipse installed, and the version that you need is the Eclipse IDE for Java developers, which is basically the minimum set of Java tools for Eclipse that you need for Android development. However, any version of the Eclipse IDE that's meant for any kind of Java development will work fine for Android development as well. Now, I happen to be doing everything on a Windows computer. However, you'll notice in this little drop down that you can also download versions of Eclipse for Linux and Mac OS X as well. So go ahead and select the particular platform that you're working on, download the tools for that platform, and what you're going to get is an archive that contains the tools. So in this case, here's the zip file that I downloaded for Windows, and of course you'll get an appropriate archive file for Linux or Mac OS as well if you download for those platforms. And all I did was to open up that archive and take the Eclipse folder within it, and I dropped that right onto my C drive on Windows. If you're working on Mac OS X or Linux, presumably you would put this into either your user directory or a specific folder where you install development tools, and that's completely up to you. You just need to keep track of where you put it so that you can then navigate to that folder, open up the Eclipse folder once it's been extracted, and be able to execute Eclipse by double-clicking the Eclipse icon. In this case, again, I'm showing this to you on Windows, so it's an executable file, a .exe file. On Mac OS X or on Linux, it may show up as just the word Eclipse. Just locate this icon, double-click it, and go ahead and open up Eclipse. Now, because I downloaded Eclipse from the internet, Windows is giving me a security warning here indicating that this is an unknown publisher. Again, it tells you where it's from on your system. If you're concerned about whether or not this is the valid version of Eclipse, know where you got it from in the first place. In my case, I know I went and got it from eclipse.org, so I'm now simply going to run that and open up the IDE. Now, when the IDE first starts executing, it gives you this workspace launcher window, and by default a workspace is placed into your user folder on your system, and it's called workspace by default. Now, a workspace in Eclipse is basically where you create the projects for the different apps or applications that you're working on, and you might actually have different workspaces for different technologies. For example, you could have an Android workspace, you might have a Java workspace for traditional Java development, you might have a C++ workspace, because as you can see here, the Eclipse IDE can also be used for C++, C and C++ development as well. So you can go ahead and use the default workspace if you like, which is what we do in these videos. I'll click OK to do that, and the IDE will continue launching, and in a moment we'll get the Eclipse window on the screen, and this is where we're going to be doing our Android development. Now, what you see on the screen at the moment is kind of the default layout of the Eclipse IDE. You can always reset this if it gets out of whack, if you will, by going to the window menu and selecting Reset Perspective. So if any of these areas were not in the default setup, or if I've resized them, clicking Yes here is going to just reconfigure to make sure that all the standard items are showing up on the screen. And just so that you have a clean view of what's going to be in there, I'm going to delete this one project that happened to show up because I've obviously done some development previously in Android before doing these videos. So you should have a nice clean IDE like the one on the screen here, and basically at this point we need to go ahead and ensure that Eclipse has been set up properly to use Java SE6. And to do that, we're going to go to the Window menu, and we're going to select Preferences. Then we'll go to the Java node and expand that, and under Compiler you can see that on my system JDK compliance is already set to 1.6 because that's actually the only version that I have installed on my computer. Some people will have multiple versions of Java installed. In that case, you can select the appropriate version from the drop-down menu here. But for the purpose of these live lessons videos and to ensure that your code compiles and runs correctly, you are going to want to work with Java 1.6, which is the point revision that corresponds to Java Standard Edition 6. So once you've made that change, if it was necessary to change it, you can click Apply and click OK, and that will ensure that Eclipse is now configured properly for Java SE6 development. and now we can get ready to move on and install the Android development tools, which we'll do in the next video.